Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to host today to our expert series, Bettina Schaller. Welcome and thank you very much for your time. Just a few words about you. You have an absolutely impressive background. So you are the Group Senior Vice President and Head of Public Affairs at the Adecco Group. Then you are the President of the World Employment Confederation and have been actually re-elected in the position. You are the co-chair of the B20 G20 Employment Task Force, a steering group member of the World Economic Forum Center for New Economy and Society, and so many titles that are absolutely impressive. First question, I cannot go through this interview without asking you, how do you do it all?
Well, thank you so much, Patricia, and let me be very humble and say that I am so much more than these titles. Yes, on paper it sounds, and you're right, those words, president and chair and co-chair, they carry some weight. First of all, I'm not alone, right? So there's teams behind that. There's colleagues and experts who support me in that. And then they're all very complementary to each other, which is wonderful. The reason as well why I've accepted some of those, because I can acknowledge that it seems like a lot, is because I knew that they would, by complementing each other, allow me to really drive the impact that I'm looking for on some of the topics. But I'm also a very structured person, and that might actually help.
Thank you very much for this tip. So the key, one of the keys to success is structure.
In my case, maybe not in everybody's, but in my case.
Let's go back to Bettina in high school. And what were your passions? What were your aspirations? Where did you see your career going? What did you want to do? And how your well-being, because in order to build such projects and have such initiatives, how was your well-being a part of all of this?
Patricia, thank you. And let me frame my answer in this way. I was a young girl from a privileged background. I actually have a Swiss passport. My father was a civil servant. I was able to travel all my life as a child as well. I grew up in a family that was stable. And so as I grew older, I noted that this is a privilege, and that with all the traveling that I'd been doing and encountering injustices and encountering environments where people had to face so many adverse situations, I had, because of that upbringing, a great advantage. And so I've really been driven all my life by making it count and by actually not only making a difference, but just also doing the right things and acknowledging those situations that are unjust or unfair or that impact people's lives. And if we take that now to the employment space, I landed up in this industry 15 years ago, and I must say I did not know about it. I myself had a career in politics before, for public and private sector, in various other industries, and then landed up in this employment industry. And that connection to my purpose was very, very imminent, because through work and through employment, you have a purpose, you build a life, you obviously build your livelihood, but there's also an element of equality and of equity, an element of growing as a person, building a future for yourself, for your family. And so this connection is very strong, and it's one that I take into my work as I advocate for well-regulated labor markets.
Thank you very much. And one question, going back to the moment when you entered in the workforce, how different was it compared to now? Because, for example, I have personally been an entrepreneur after the period of COVID, and talking to my friends who are in the corporate world, we see that there's a completely indescribable difference between pre-COVID workplace well-being and post-COVID workplace well-being. So I would love to hear your opinion through some expert eyes, how things have changed since you joined the workforce.
Since I joined, indeed, yes, the shifts have been massive. And as you say, and that was the biggest, was COVID, clearly, and we will talk about it, no doubt. So I joined pre-financial crisis, 2008, 2009. By that time, I was well established already as a professional. And between the moment that I started and then seeing what the effects of that financial crisis brought to corporate world, which is the world that I chose, that was the one big hiatus that I saw back then. If I look at where we are today, and we're having this conversation in early 2025, which is actually a moment, if we look at workplaces, and if I may go into that direction, where the notion of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is put into question. Well, interestingly enough, this notion actually came up very strongly after the financial crisis. Those years, 2010, 2011. So for the past 10 to 15 years, we've really been driving that. And now we're all facing a backlash. We're all going to have to figure out what that means for us. But these are the type of changes that we see probably, I don't want to put a number to it, but probably every 10 to 15 years, we do see these changes. And so indeed, the longer you are a professional, the more you do see such changes, and then you have to adapt to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If we talk about the workplace today, how do you define a healthy workplace? And because when we say healthy workplaces, we have so many expectations, right? We want to be treated in the perfect way. We want to be given the perfect opportunities. We want everything to be perfect, right? In our ideal world. However, we're people, and we know that we cannot be perfect all the time. How is well-being in your eyes in today's world?
Patricia, I appreciate the question and also the angle that you give to it, which is around the expectation of workers. Because that is such an interesting one. And there's many people, and I'm one of those, we understand that there's different expectations depending on generations. And we know that with younger generations entering the labor market, or already in it now, understanding those expectations and, aligning them to the ones of previous generations is one of the challenges we're encountering. But the comment I also want to make is, I think that expectations are actually good. And I think that one of the achievements of our society, and also who we are as civilized and educated humans and professionals, is the fact that there are workers' rights, and that there are labor rights, and that there are frameworks that are built for workers to expect, indeed, to be in an environment where their health, and I mean starting with their physical health, right, that is not in danger and not harmed, that there's no discrimination against them, again, when it comes to the physical environment. And so again, the mental aspect there plays into it just as strongly, of course. I think the expectation part, I see as a positive challenge, and we have to see that from the opportunity perspective as well, of course, is then that there's still different interpretations around how those should be met. And I mean, there again, I know, our friends and audience come from all parts of the globe, and there will be such stark differences that are very often connected also to an economic situation, to cultural situations. I think what we all strive for, and what the aim should be, is a well-being environment where all aspects of health are considered. I'm sure we're going to talk about those, but that should be the aim. And for some, I mean, there's some societies, I don't want to paint a gloom picture, but there's many parts of the world that are in war right now. I would feel here sitting with you at the headquarters of this multinational in Switzerland by a beautiful lake. How can I pretend or suggest certain elements knowing that there are people in so many different situations? So this is a big aspect, I think, today in the whole well-being conversation as well, is always make sure that it's embedded into the environment, but also never forget what the aim and the aspiration should be.
Thank you. These are extremely good points. And I myself, for example, I come from Romania. a country with a completely different economic outlook than Switzerland. Yeah, from this point of view, they have very, very different work environments in these two countries. You touched on something very interesting that I would love to talk about. You talked about the different generations. I myself, I am a millennial. We see a big shift in Gen Z that are coming into the workforce. And of course, we've all seen those memes on the internet, how millennials take things and how baby boomers take things and how Gen Z. So I see a lot of things in the Gen Z generation that I really admire, but they're very different. I would love to hear your view on this topic.
Tough question, that one. Tough question, that one. No, there. Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's a tough one. And thank you for admiring. I admire a lot of traits in, many other generations as well. Maybe on that one, again, I've had the luck to travel a lot. I still do. I've come to the conclusion it's not the passport you have, and actually not the age you have, it's the character. I recognize the same type of people, whether they're from, to exaggerate, maybe from Mongolia, Turkey, or Germany, right? And I can see that trait in somebody, when they're young or older. Having said that, it's important because generations are, again, they're struck by the moment of time, right? That they're young, that they grow up, that they actually enter the labor market and the world of work. You can see I'm completely biased with my angle, of course. And again, a generation back in the early 2000s that's entering the world in a context of financial crisis will have a different outlook than one that doesn't. The generation now that enters the workforce after COVID and in an environment where there's a climate crisis, where there's wars, is going to have another approach as well. The next generation will enter, I think, labor markets definitely in the Western world, where demography actually plays in their favor because there's such a scarcity that they are needed. With that said, there's that whole digital component. Everybody's talking about it. We all need to figure out what that means for everybody, actually, independently of the age as well. So at the end, people I admire are those who they're able to really actually always come back to the core values of just, being a good person, being honest. You try your hardest, which, by the way, you can't always do either. So it's okay if every now and then you need a break, just acknowledge that as well. But yeah, just again, be actually somebody who is pleasant to be around. Let's put it this way.
Very important what you said. When you look at yourself in the mirror, to be happy with yourself. Sure. When you go to bed, be happy with yourself. And as you told me, you cannot always be perfect. No. And touching on another point that you mentioned, can we talk about employee mental health versus organizational or workplace well-being? Because when we talk about physical health, we can maybe see it in an easier way. So how can well-being be measured, be seen, be structured so it can go into regulation? What can workplaces do to take care about the psychosocial environment in which people come, so people feel good in that workplace environment? This considering we have remote work as well, and as you said, technological challenges.
What a humongous question, Patricia. I think there were a few questions in there, and so let me again humbly attempt to answer, and you will prompt me more. But let me mention here. So in that entire mental health conundrum that we're seeing, look, for I'm like so many, of course, a big believer that you need data to drive proper policy. And so already we get into an area which makes it complicated, right? Okay, do we have the data? Do we have it to the necessary granularity when it comes to countries, industries, etc.? But the data that we're seeing, and here I'm also referring to some surveys from major companies, the Adecco group included. There's a global workforce of the future, for instance, that the company has been now carrying out for 5 years. Thousands of people are surveyed there. And what we've seen in that type of data, again, and I see it, I say it because I see it in others as well, is that the levels of burnout are absolutely through the roof, unacceptably through the roof. So if you ask me now if I connect it to, okay, and how at the policy level, can we address that? Well, it is one that can and should be tackled by specific measures. If you look at the country level, this often has to do with that feeling of security that should be given to workers, right? So there's policies that can aim towards that. To me, actually, the fact that you can indeed put in place policies that allow for flexibility, a flexible way to execute your work can help alleviate that burnout. Sometimes it's actually a cause of burnout. That's another problem. But this is where at the policy level, some people actually cannot handle too much freedom, right? So they need the structure again. So we have an issue there. And then there's policies at the organizational level. Indeed, I mean, you will know that much better. But as you see, this is my way of looking at it. I think that again in the burnout discussion, we have to decompose the data. We have to see, is it more young women with children who then obviously would require policies that, well, give them support in their family environment? Is it more sector related? For instance, is it specific to the hotel and restaurant industry, the gastronomy industry? So there as well is something to be done around working time policies, maybe around wage policies as well. Is it the healthcare industry? We've seen a disproportionate amount of people with very bad mental situations in the healthcare industry itself. I think that's where that the focus should be on. And look, let's be honest, in some countries it is because they can, right? But this is definitely an area where the focus of policymakers is lying. Absolutely.
You mentioned that data is extremely important in the whole process. And this is something that we actually focus on at MindSpark 360. And we always go from the angle of trying to ask the right questions in order to get the right data. And we saw that there are a lot of amazing solutions, innovative solutions out there on employee well-being, either on organizational workplace well-being or on employee mental health. So how employers can navigate, from your point of view, this myriad of solutions, which everyone promises something huge. And also something that we saw, and I really wanted to hear your opinion on this one, is that around 2% of the solutions in mental health are actually science-based. Mm-hmm. So how do employers handle this topic? And also 80% of organizations implement solutions without analyzing their data first. Yeah. What is your opinion about this?
That's one of the reasons why MindSpark, to me, is very, very convincing, this data approach. So yeah, I mean, organizations need to take that step. They need to invest the necessary amount to build the data, and I mean amount of time as well, to build that data set, and then start to go from there, to build incrementally. I would advise any organization, well, first of all, you need that one champion in your organization, right? I mean, and that champion, of course, if it's your, top leader, even better, but then it's top down. I think it should be somebody in the organization who is very credible, authentic around it, and who has then the energy to drive that topic. That champion then needs to find the allies, but it's not an effort that you can do alone. It's not an effort that should be theoretical. It's an effort that should be accompanied by engagement of people who are, also willing to put in their personal time and their passion behind it. And then once the data is there, make actually sure that you drive a holistic approach. So yes, it's about physical well-being, it's about mental well-being, but there's the whole purpose as well of your organization that should be seen into that and brought into that. And then actually the social elements, what makes the company as an organization, and as that multitude of individuals that make it.
Pick up on this. If you have a small organization, let's say you have 10 employees, it is easier to implement well-being solutions, be it physical, psychological, etc., than if you have 100,000, it's even hard to say the number, employees. You are specialized in very large organizations. So how can that one champion not get lost with his goal or her goal in a huge organization? How do we get the buy-in of top management?
Look, I think in our days, if you can't get the buy-in, I would actually change company. To be quite honest, I would actually literally question whether this is the right place to work, right? Because any organization that doesn't have that as part of the, for sure, human resource priorities and strategy, I would really question. I mean, this, in my view, today is part of your employer value proposition. It's going to define your attractiveness as an employer. And you're going to want to invest in ensuring the mental well-being, the overall well-being. We actually put the notion of workforce vitality behind that.
I love that.
So again, look, I think earlier I mentioned you cannot do this alone. The bigger the organization, the more you then have to move into setting up a process and a policy. And my experience with organizations, again, is you might want from the headquarters to give guidance, but then you still want your various units, country or business units, to be able to shape it according to those specificities. But again, if the top does not support it somehow, then you've got a bigger issue, actually, which then might also explain if you have issues per se.
So changing the culture in an organization, if it's a very large organization, if you don't have buy-in from the top, you cannot do that.
I wouldn't say that, but then the road is going to be more cumbersome, right? And this is the type of culture, you're going to have to, if you don't have the buy-in from the top, then I really wonder, whether if you have it in you to spend those next 5 to 10 years it might take, then do it, actually. And we would need people, right, that do that to change the culture. But you might actually want to shift to an environment that is more conducive to a healthy environment.
Thank you. And if we talk about, on the other side, if we talk about innovators, so let's say startups like ourselves who don't have huge teams, what is your advice for them? How should they collaborate with a large organization? How do they find this champion? Is it better to connect to the top management, to a smaller team? How can they also make sure that they build solutions that are connected to the real world, not fantasies that would be nice to have, but as we said, no one implements them?
Well, how you find the champion, it's by, and you're such a great example yourself, Patricia, right? You're exactly, you're very relentless, and you don't give up, and then you just ask your questions and you find your way. I would also say, if you notice that you don't get further, then you pivot. Right? Then maybe it's just not the right time with that organization. Maybe you want to try later at another stage and, focus on, again, those leads that you have. Also by hearsay, you make sure that you build that network that will support you. And again, I know that these are all steps that you've been taking. So there's no big secret there. By my experience, people with passion, that is something that just is infectious. People will respond to that, right? And again, if you're authentic and passionate, then you will get traction. The beautiful thing in our days as well is that technology and actually social media is a wonderful platform for an organization to get a good attention on topics. You know how to then tag and connect and build a network for yourself. So if you believe in it, you have the passion, you go for it with a plan, you will get there. Absolutely. Look, I mean, by connecting with the real world, with the business, with the clients, with the organizations that have that use case and that problem that the innovators can solve. And so establishing that real case of this is the one problem that actually needs to be solved, and that's what the innovation caters for. That is that is what's going to make it a success, likely in business or not, right? But then again, the essence of innovation is to also try things and to go beyond and maybe actually produce items that are not necessarily always going to make it to market. So if you're an innovator that's for profit oriented, then I can see the question. But I do hope, and I think that's immensely human as well, that we're always going to, we wouldn't have made it to the moon if it wasn't on all of these. So we're always going to need those innovators who also maybe every now and then create things that might not necessarily make it to market.
To wrap up, where should innovators focus their attention when it comes to employment? What are the biggest problems in employment that you think they could find solutions? And also, what are the biggest trends in employment that we're going to see in 2025 and the years that come?
The very easy question to wrap up as well again on this one. Let me see. Since we're in this context of well-being and workforce vitality, let me go back to that notion of burnout, right? If we crack that one, if we're able to bring more people back to a situation where they feel comfortable to coming back to work and where they feel that they've got the right support system and the right tools to, well, be productive again, right? Where they can see they're part of a system and that doesn't harm them mentally, then that will be a great contribution. And for 25, this is absolutely one of the topics. Look, there's a huge policy agenda. There's a big piece of agenda items out there. We continue to focus on policies for young people to enter the labor market. So that is a big one. But what I want to end off with, and maybe that closes the circle around the multiple generations at work, also considering the demographic development, there's that older worker and older workforce piece. More people will go into retirement, but they actually want to continue working. But structurally, we haven't quite gotten that right yet. So there will be some focus on that as well. So demography-related policy, really. And then, of course, the big topic around regulating the world of digital tech and AI in the labor market is also going to continue to have a big attention. And thank you so much, Patricia, for this conversation. I hope there will be a lot more to come. And I wish you a lot of success. A lot of success.
Thank you very much, Bettina, for your time. Thank you.